I'm Carmiece Graves, and I practice family law in the Washington, D.C. area.
One of the questions we have to think about, like say if you're married and you're dealing with your house and you own it together, the question is, well, we have an asset that we need to deal with. Sunset, they just abandoned me and come back. They've been gone. They've been gone. They've been gone. They ain't seen nobody, so I guess it's over. Like this, man, you just can't leave. Not true. Okay, that's what they call me.
Welcome to my channel. Welcome to the Carmiece Graves. It used to be a radio show, but now I'm streaming live on social media like everyone else, giving you great tips and information. So if you have not tuned into me before, thank you so much. I probably have a topic of interest to you today. So let me introduce myself. My name is Attorney Carmiece Graves, and I practice family law in the Washington, D.C. area. And I've been doing this for the last 10 years, lots of experience in that area. But the rarity that I come across is the topic that I'm going to explore today is when we're actually proceeding in a divorce case on adultery. And there's a lot of misnomers about what it is, what it isn't. And I'm going to unpack that for you so that you have more information about it, because there's a lot of myths about it, because it's personal. It's dealing with your marriage, dealing with your relationships, and possibly a third party. But I want to clarify for you what the actual claim of adultery is under Maryland law in a divorce. Okay, so we're going to jump right into that, and then at the end of the video I'm going to provide you with some alternatives, because first off, I'm going to tell you, before we even get into adultery, it's highly discouraged. And let me tell you, I always discourage my clients where possible to avoid a claim of adultery. Let me explain what the definition, let me read the definition of adultery is under the law, and then we are going to unpack this a little bit. Okay? So, first, before we get into that, I wanted to tell you that there are two different standards. So I titled this video, The Cheating Spouse versus Adultery. And let's talk about the differences between those standards. And when I shift to the standard of adultery, I'll go ahead and read it, because I want to talk about, this is the big gap between what people understand adultery to what they think it is versus what it is under the law. And this is the difference, because in your relationship, right, the standard is a lot lower for you to know that your spouse is not being faithful. Okay, you can rely on changes of behavioral patterns. Your intuition is the strongest one. The bells are going off. All of a sudden, someone's coming home 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock on a Tuesday with no good explanation. Maybe the phone is not being answered when the phone should be answered. All those weird things that happen that could give you the sense, oh, something's not right. Then you're in the context of your relationship, and you know what's not happening between y'all, right? You're like, it's kind of cold in the bedroom, things are not going right, and this person is, seeming like they have interest elsewhere, not wanting to spend time with the spouse, and it's a problem. So circumstantially that this thing is not kosher, right? So with that hunch and that instinct, you may say, listen, my spouse is cheating. Okay. You might even run across a message, a communication with a person. Person's popping up. They're just not where they're supposed to be. The relationship, you can't really connect the dots of how y'all know each other, right? You're like, well, you know this person from. So those things can really have you say, look, things are not how they're supposed to be. And I think, based on what we have going on, I may go my separate ways. Now, that is a different standard than adultery in a divorce case. The adultery in the divorce case has a lot more evidence needed to bring this claim. And let me read what it is. So, Maryland law. Adultery defined as voluntary sexual intercourse between a married person and a partner other than the lawful husband or wife. Maybe they've updated the language. I don't know. I mean, I looked it up recently. This case, but I'm sure they will. In order to amount to adultery, there must be some, listen to these words, ooh, penetration of the female organ by the male organ. Ew. This is not cool, okay? This is, I mean, just reading the definition, the number one reason why I'm like this, please, can we find another way? Nobody wants to talk about this in court. This is the elements that you got to prove, right? So they say, well, of course, through life, people are like, look, you're not going to get all that hardcore. I mean, this day and age, people video a lot. So we might have been coming back around to the date where people can prove this. I got the video. I got so, well, a little bit before now it's time, people were like, you don't really get that footage. So the court says, okay, well, if you can prove that there was disposition and opportunity, to do this, and the circumstances would have led to, yeah, they probably did it. Yeah, they probably was doing the nasty, but you have to bring that evidence to the court. So disposition and opportunity is the other way. So either you got it like nailed, like this, I see their face, you see their face, I mean, you see other stuff, according to the law, you can bring this. Now, do you hear like just how messy this is? This is messy. And I discourage people from really needing this element, needing this claim to bring forth a divorce, because it's just emotionally brutal. It's emotionally brutal. I mean, come on. Your spouse is already cheating, and now you got to go and dredge up evidence of it. So, and then the second reason why I say, let's find another way to this is because it can be expensive, because it must be corroborated by a third party, and you're going to need, so now you can say, okay, and here's another thing about litigation and court that sometimes people, if you've never been through it before, and hopefully, you may never have to, but if you listen to this video, there might be something going on. A lot of people go through it, but, until you're there, you're not there. And that's the purpose of these videos, to kind of give you some insight. So not only does this have to have been occurring or have occurred, you have to be able to document it, right? Need footage, so either it's going to be pretty uncomfortable, emotionally crushing if you're in the bushes, looking at, and an example. Oh, let me give you the example of the disposition and opportunity. Let me unpack that. What does that mean? I just said those words and I threw it out there. Sorry, back that up. So that's like, okay, you see, like, okay, his or her car is parked outside this person's house that's not your house, that who lives there. So who lives there, and you know how that is. And the car is there every night or a couple nights, and it's there for a long period of time. Like, and they this is how the report sound from the private investigators. It was like this, I was there and the car came up, and they got out the car, went into the house at 9 p.m. or 7 p.m. And then, all the lights were out in the house at like 10 o'clock, and the car stayed there overnight. How do you know the car didn't leave? There was frost on the window. So someone stayed there overnight to check this out and get this data. Okay. And they say, okay, there was frost on the car. So I know the car didn't move, wasn't started, because if it was, there would be no frost. I mean, this is okay. And then they got up and they left out the house at 7 a.m. Okay, this is the type of reporting needed to show even the disposition and opportunity. So, I mean, it gets interesting. I just think, listen, I mean, we could find another way. And a lot of times this is coming up more so now as a result of the pandemic. So, one of the things I've noticed since 2020, which makes sense, is that people are less inclined to move out, right? Got strict orders and all this, barrage of life-changing circumstances, which had us be still, locked down, be in the house, don't go, don't travel, don't move, So now when people are still in the midst of a divorce, that inclination to not move is there. So it really has it be that some people are trying to move forward with this claim of adultery. There are alternatives, So I did say I would provide, some ideas. There's alternatives. There's other ways to do this. You could do a mutual consent divorce. Okay, so think about the scenario where this is moving forward. You got some other issues going on here that you have to watch out for, because if someone's cheating, right, and it's like, look, this is really over, do we have the emotional maturity to just say, yeah, let's just wind this up and wrap it up and move on? If not, I mean, what's really happening? It's like, don't you really want out? And sometimes I'm in divorces, and if you're dealing with the other party and they just don't have the emotional maturity, they don't want you to leave easily, wanted to make it a hard way forward. Well, that's when we can sit down and come up with a strategy on what we really need to do to move this forward, because we're dealing with people wanting to get divorced while still cohabitating. And I don't think that this, and let me say this. You could be in the scenario where, and my experience has been, if you have the evidence, right, if you really nailed them red handed, usually in those scenarios, people are willing to, just their guilt alone will have them want to settle the case. I mean, good grief. You already stepped out and ruined your vows and stuff. Go gracefully, and let's go ahead and get a mutual consent divorce. Let's get a settlement agreement done. Save money. Didn't say no money, because we're gonna, please don't get me started. If you have assets, do not play around with your DIY marital property agreements, and then you get mad talking about someone took advantage of you. You should don't do that yourself. This way is a better way, but still one I would say definitely, you want to, if you have something to lose. Now, if you don't have no assets, I mean, go ahead. This is, bless you. Talking to the people that have assets to lose, to divide, and to make decisions about, you want those agreements to be clear. So you can see exactly where I want you guys to land on a mutual consent. Let's move on, because to recap, this adultery, I understand how it is, being in a relationship and feeling like, well, knowing you've been betrayed. And let me tell you, I'm glad I didn't forget this point. Typically, if you have enough evidence, really and truly, to prove adultery, it's probably that this has been going on for a while and you've been kind of like trying to blind eye it, like, I don't really see it. I don't really see it. I don't really see it. Maybe it'll get better. And it just got bigger and it got more apparent. Listen, I'm all for trust your instincts, your your instincts. Trust your intuition. If your intuition is saying it's not right, it's not right. And that's when you get support from family, friends. Go to therapy, do whatever you have to do to have the support you need to make the big move you need to make for your happiness. Because I hear a lot of times too, people say, I didn't get married to get divorced. You didn't get married to be miserable either, or did you? I don't think so. So, okay, that's my response to that one. You didn't get married to be miserable. You envision that your marriage would increase your happiness and joy in life. I know that's what you thought, because that's why you're so happy on the wedding day. And now it's okay. There's a lot of us, in life. I mean, there's a lot of people out here that have to learn, and you get to dust yourself off and, learn from the experience and make a better choice for yourself and your life going forward. But definitely do not hold back the compassion you need to grant yourself to have not made the best decision and then suffer under this guise that I didn't get married to get divorced. Like, all right, come on now. All right. All right. So that is that. And you guys know I always put the information, but it is in the notes below. You can reach out, get a consultation if you need to understand maybe some other strategies other than bringing a claim for adultery. Want to assess, because sometimes you may just have direct information, like you might just have the evidence. I've seen cases where people have the admission. Yes, there's a exchange where there's an admission that someone has slept with another person, had the sexual intercourse, and that's enough. So you may need to sit down and figure out, hey, but then listen, okay, adultery would only be happening. I mean, I think that's a good strategy if you want to speed up the time and you can't get the consent. And then, like that's one. I think that's a good one. You have the evidence. You don't want to wait the 12-month separation and you can't get the mutual consent. But I wouldn't do it if you guys are still living together in the same house. Like that sucks no matter what. Okay. Like bringing a divorce case and you guys are still living together. Come on. What kind of, woo, it has not been pretty. Okay. So you guys can reach out to me if you need more discussion, do a deeper dive, understand more about best ways to move forward, because it's just something that we want to get through, but we don't want to just emotionally drag ourselves. I want you to come out on the other side in a better position, ready to start the next chapter of your life. So thanks so much for tuning in. And I have come out of the trenches of much litigation. So I'm back and I have a lot of great gems to share with you. So I will be in touch soon. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Carmiece Graves, and I practice family law in the Washington, D.C. area.
One of the questions we have to think about, like say if you're married and you're dealing with your house and you own it together, the question is, well, we have an asset that we need to deal with.